I joined right on the crest of everything when the American contract had just been signed, and they had already started to set up a U.S. tour and everything. So that was all going on, but nobody believed it. I didn't believe it. You know, when the manager came to me and said, yeah, we got a band, you know, we got a U.S. contract, and we're going to start a tour in August, and I'm like, I've heard all those things before. You know, I'd be in a small band, and our manager would go to Toronto and talk to the record company, and they'd say, oh, yeah, well, yeah, maybe we can do something. So the manager would get all hyped up, and he'd want you to be hyped up, and he'd say, yeah, I think we're going to get a deal here, and we're going to be out on tour opening for, you know, Jethro Tull or something. Oh, yeah? So you believe it, and then there's no problem there because it's all positive, but when it doesn't happen, you know, you tend to be, being that young and being that ambitious, you know, you really get crushed by it. So I heard all this stuff, and I didn't believe it at all, that, you know, this band that I'd never heard of at the time could possibly have a U.S. recording contract. So basically we went off to the U.S. with all of that being true and in place, and disappeared as far as Canada was concerned because they still hadn't heard of us. And it wasn't until we started appearing on U.S. TV shows at the time and getting some attention by radio down there that suddenly, you know, to our great surprise, when we got the Juno for Most Promising Group in like 74, 75 or something like that, we were astonished because, you know, we couldn't get a high school gig in Canada at the time.
Around the time of Caress of Steel, we kind of had a setback, and that was kind of a negative time. So maybe around that time, we were pondering the future a bit.
Caress of Steel was an important record in our development, but it certainly wasn't a very successful, commercially successful record. We were very proud of it, but unfortunately, it didn't do that well, and it was at a transitional point where we were going from an opening act to a special guest with the occasional headline gig, and the gigs weren't doing too well, and we were hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, so management was worried, the record company was worried, everyone was worried.
Things were dark, and there was no support from outside us, you know, even from the record company, from management, even from our road crew, you know. Everybody was down on us. And we were working the most depressing places, tiny little clubs in suburban United States, you know, way in the outskirts of Chicago and stuff, playing these divey little biker bars and stuff. And we called it, even at the time, the Down the Tubes tour, half jokingly, but obviously half reflecting on the reality of it.
I remember we were sitting in the van and we had a long talk about direction and, you know, whether we were doing the right thing. And we came out of that discussion feeling very positive about the direction we were going in. And we were quite, you know, fired up and angry about everyone's reaction and lack of belief.
And suddenly, enormous crisis where we were all on our own, basically, and no support and very dark future, and had to examine that. You know, how do we counter this? Well, fortunately, I think anyway, the way we chose to counter it was with anger. You know, just bang, forget it. And 2112 was a result of that, and it was a very angry album. And the theme of it, even of the individual against the mass thinking, was the implicit theme of it, but it was also our theme, you know, it was also what was really angering us. So I think all of that conviction went straight into the music, and the whole album was made in like a month, so it was made under concentration, but also in a concentrated period of time. So I think there was also the possibility for that to happen, for all of this angst and all of this rejection and this resentment and everything that we felt did go into those grooves, I feel, and also spoke out, you know. It was true accessibility in the sense that it was communication. We were communicating our anger and our rebellion, and we're not going to take it anymore, and this is what we say in tough. You know, all of that was in there, and suddenly that album spoke.
Of course, everybody then felt, oh yeah, we knew it all the time.
I mean, a lot of the reviews we got in the early days, they were biting.
They were nasty.
Yeah. But, you know, you slag them off, you know, you slag them right back, and you go, what does he know when you're younger? And then every once in a while there'll be one that you'll pay attention to and will teach you something about what you're doing, which is, I guess, the role of criticism. But unfortunately, they're few and far between, helpful criticism.
We just fell through the cracks, basically, and an anomaly is the other way of saying that. Our record company was our American record company was in tremendous disarray at the time, and we were just, you know, allowed to stumble around. And in every respect, yes, having made really made our name on the stages, really, rather than through radio or through press. And radio for us was a response. You know, once we became popular enough as a live band, the request lines started to light up often enough about us that radio stations played us. And again, that was a very well-defined turning point with moving pictures. Our popularity reached a certain critical mass, basically, where it couldn't be held down that far anymore, and radio was forced into a very reluctant position of having to play us.
But you know, you're just as distrustful of good reviews. I mean, every time there's a really overly great review, you go, what is this? And you don't really have as much any respect for it either. So, it's, you know, you're never happy, really. It's just that every once in a while you get that review that compliments you and criticizes you, that you kind of grabs your attention and makes you focus in that maybe this person is really sensitive to what we're doing.
In the United States, it was different. We had college radio, and we had some of the small alternative stations around the United States, but no mainstream at all. And it was moving pictures that created that. And I don't think it was the difference in the music that time. I think it was just the critical mass of popularity that had been built up through just working, you know, just playing live. And I think we continued to open shows right up till about 77 or 78 or so. So we were still being seen by a lot of people who wouldn't pay money just to come and see us.
The fact that we've been kind of an anti-image band, but not really militantly, I guess. It's kind of been accidentally an anti-image band, which has, in the end, come around to be our image to a certain degree. That's kept us away from a lot of the kind of lifestyle press, and it's kind of put us off in a more quiet place, which I think has been very healthy for us, and probably another ingredient as to why we've been around for so long.
We're not that kind of group. We're not personalities, you know, like some other artists might be. You don't really see us in People magazine. Although I think with Presto there was a photograph of the record, or of us, which my mother found very interesting. Oh boy, it's in People. But I mean, that's how this success, they relate to success. But we've never been a group that's been you know, a personality type group. We're probably not the best looking guys at the best of times, and there's nothing, oh, what do you really think? But, you know, there's not something that you can latch on to, I think, with us physically that you consider attractive, maybe. But, and it's never been important to us to be regarded that way.
Yeah, we have such a hardcore, dedicated, audience that they've really kept us going over the years. And I kind of look at it like that core is kind of always interested in, and it is, I think, real interest and curiosity as what we're going to do next. So they're really kind of involved in our growth. And regardless of which way we grow, I don't think they immediately turn off. They kind of listen and go, oh, this is what they're doing now. It's interesting. And then there's other fans that kind of come and go. When we do an album that happens to suit the popular mood, then, you know, it expands. And then when it doesn't suit the popular mood, then it shrinks a little bit. That core keeps us ticking.
In, I guess that was about 1980 or so, people were coming to our concerts that, you know, I don't think they had any idea why they were there, but it was the thing to do that year, to go see Rush. So I think everything doubled for us that year. Twice as many people were coming to see us, twice as many people bought our record, and then with the next record and the next tour, it all went back to normal.
I mean, our audience has really grown with us over these couple of decades. You know, we're not the only ones with thinning hair in that hall. There are lots of our fans that are, you know, our age, that have been there since the first record, or maybe the third record or fourth record. And that's I think, the most rewarding thing of it all, to see the people that have been there and supported you and grown with you all along and never wanted anything more from you than another record.
Because I don't think in terms of those kind of records, so I think in terms of how many albums we've made and, you know, how many songs, how many hours in the studio, how many days on the road. That's what I remember when I think back to our history. I don't think of so many units sold in Swaziland or wherever, you know. That's an abstraction that's really hard to come to grips with. But it's the memories, it's the wrinkles on the face, it's those kind of things that kind of spark, you know, memories of the past and all the things we've done.
There have been records we liked a lot that have been overlooked, and never understood why. But then sometimes later on they have a renaissance, and suddenly people start to go back to them and realize what eluded them at the time. Maybe Grace Under Pressure was like that. I thought it was such a record for the times that again, it would have that accessibility built in, that people would just respond to the things that I was feeling and the things that all of us put into that record. But it didn't really happen. It was greeted by kind of consternation at the time, even by our fans. And yet later on, I knew it came to be a favorite, considered a favorite album among a lot of our fans. So it's gratifying that that does happen, that eventually turns around and something you believed in enormously. Because early on, that can be really frustrating if you really believe in something a lot and then other people don't. It's like, oh, what do we do?
I think the 2112, I think that was one album that was us. Nobody else sounded like that. And probably Farewell to Kings. That's another one of those records where we're very happy with a new place that we've gotten to musically, and Moving Pictures. And to a large degree, Presto was that kind of album.
Perhaps we've influenced some other artists or some other bands in that you can do it your own way, and you can be successful on all terms by doing it your own way and keeping everybody happy, and therefore giving yourself freedom to do things the way you want to do them.
We never felt like we were going against the grain, except when people would either tell you or things would not be going so great, and you felt like you were going against the grain. But really, we just did what we did. There was no great master plan, and there's never been. It's like we're starting to write this coming Monday, and none of us know what the hell we're going to write. We just get together, and everybody's a little anxious, and something comes out.
There are bands, a few bands. Dream Theater is an example of a fairly young band that's writing in a style that pushes their musical abilities to the furthest point, and they can. And there are a number of bands that are like that have said that we've influenced them that way, and that's certainly satisfying to know that there are still a lot of young musicians that really want to go out there and just be great musicians.
We were lucky in so many ways. The element of chance just shone for us, because if I wrote down the things that we set out to do, to be the kind of band that wouldn't be dependent upon this and wouldn't compromise for that and wouldn't tailor ourselves for pop radio and all that and wouldn't play the role of pop group and wouldn't have giant hair, all the things that we wouldn't do alone, let alone what we decided we would do. If you added all that up, you would definitely write under it, forget it, failure, no hope. And in retrospect, I see it that way too. It's astonishing to me that not only did we break through, but we have survived up till now.
I think part of it is that we're a three-piece band. You get three people, it's often easier to work that way than more than three. You tend not to break into factions, obviously. We get along very well as friends. We really enjoy each other's company. We laugh an awful lot. I think that's probably been the key, is our collective sense of humor over the years, and it's helped us to weather some of the tougher times.
When we started, people kind of expected you to have, they gave you some time to develop. You had a couple of albums to show your stuff, to get it together, before they just kind of hacked you off the label. But I think the attention span is much shorter now. I think you have less time to develop than you used to.
And I think we partly learned it from experience, because when we first went on the road, we opened up for so many years for other bands. We were on the road with Kiss for years, and we saw how the unstable members of the band couldn't survive, and the stable members did and have. And we opened for bands like Aerosmith and saw how reckless self-destruction, was not the course for the future. So we just learned balance, I think, and we didn't have to overreact. Again, the way they didn't insist that no one else in the world should drink because we're hopeless alcoholics. None of that was necessary, because we could learn these lessons slowly. And we could see, okay, if people are playing this role, we used to watch them dealing with celebrity and dealing with fame, watch them dealing with the decadence and the excesses that are possible. When you have that much free time and disposable income and everything else, all these things can happen so easily, and we saw them happen firsthand. Watch these people that we were with every day going through these things. And I think that was an important lesson that taught us that, if we want to survive as we are, instead of becoming the role, and that really was the choice, as I perceived it then and as I do now. You can either play this role and become it, or fight it. Yeah. But it's not easy. It really isn't, because you're expected to do that. You're expected to play this role, and you're expected to be some kind of idol by everyone, by your fans. Everyone expects that kind of thing, and they can't believe that you could possibly want to do anything ordinary or just be an ordinary person.
We've been fortunate in that we've had control over the music that we write and record, and we've had a very loyal audience that's grown with us over the years. So when things go right, you know, why try to fix it? I guess that's been the perception around the band on the things that, I guess, management and record company and all that. And because of that, we don't get any external pressure on us, really, to speak of. And we're left freer to do what we've always done and what we always will do, I guess.